Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to a panel discussion about VATSIM, where the worlds collide but planes don't. I'm happy to be and honored to moderate this panel. My name is Brandon Wenning, and I'm a Deputy Division Director for the United States Division of VATSIM. And before we get started and introduce the panel, I want to share just a little bit about myself. I've been a member of VATSIM for over 9 years and been a staff member, volunteer for 8. I've volunteered all across the nation in various parts. In the real world, I'm a private pilot with my instrument rating and also a ground instructor. Born and raised a Hoosier, Indiana, and I do own a Grumman Cheetah. I'm a proud owner, and it's been amazing to see my aviation journey really blossom from VATSIM, and it's truly what inspired me to speak at last year's show and this year to bring a panel to you about VATSIM. Before we let these guys do a bunch of the talking, I wanted to discuss just a little high level of what VATSIM is for everybody in case you're unaware. VATSIM is the Virtual Air Traffic Simulation Network where we aim to simulate real-world conditions for the virtual pilots and all of controllers to enjoy. It's a great community for aviation enthusiasts to expand their flight simulation experience and a great learning environment as well. You have great opportunities to be networking with everybody, and you create a ton of lifelong friends on the network. So, to introduce our panel here, we have Mr. Paul Semerin here. He's an air traffic controller and a supervisor on the VATSIM network. Yeah, give him a round of applause. Yep, Paulie. Paul also helps out as our air traffic manager of the Virtual Atlantic ARTCC. So we're super happy to have him here. Next to him is Joe Pence. Joe is an airline first officer. He's also a Gold Seal CFII and an MEI, and he's also an instructor in our New York facility on the network. Next to him is Tim Barber, the VATSIM president. Tim's also an ATPL pilot. And next to him, you may have heard of him before, is CitationMax Weldon. Max is a citation captain, a CFII, and also a virtual New York controller. So thank you guys for being here today. And I wanted to start off with asking you the question of how did you guys get into flight sim? And I'd like to hear from everybody going down the line.
Hey, oh, there we go. We're on. Thanks, Brandon. So I started flight simulation probably about 15 or so years ago. Started on FSX, progressed into their multiplayer server, the GameSpy server. Did a little bit of ATC back when they still had all that until that all went away, unfortunately. Found about VATSIM just scrolling through YouTube of just random aviation videos, and I heard about VATSIM. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take a look. So I became a pilot back in 2013. So it's been a little while, and then eventually progressed into the ATC side of things, and then I fell in love with it. I progressed into the military, the Air Force, became a F-35 mechanic for a little while, but I still had that passion of aviation, and I decided to pursue the ATC career field. So I've been a certified controller for about 1.5 years now. So that's my aviation story.
First off, great to be here alongside everyone here. I discovered flight sim back around 2014, 2015. I was ending college, similar to Paul here. I was scrolling through YouTube, saw some different videos and whatnot, and saw primarily VATSIM stuff, and I wanted to get involved in the ATC side of things. And so sort of delved into researching that, discovered VATSIM, signed up in New York, and started earning my ratings on my way up. Earning my rating, someone says to me, you should take a real-world discovery flight. And before that point, I've only been on VATSIM for 2 years. I'm like, I don't know if I'll like it. So I go up with my instructor and fall in love with it, work my way up. Full-time, I was an engineer, but I was also building my time as a flight instructor and earned my way up to eventually join the airlines 2 years ago. And I'm still very much active on the virtual side of things for VATSIM, and that's how I got involved.
Well, I'm a little bit older than these guys. My father opened up a personal computer store in 1983, and as a 12-year-old, his employees would hate having me around. So they would plant me in front of a computer, and invariably Microsoft Flight Simulator version 1 is where I got started, and was hooked immediately. When I turned 18, I got my private license. and ended up going to university, then a aviation college, and ended up becoming a pilot in the mid-90s, and did that through until I retired from aviation in 2007. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah, so how I got into it was actually in the FS 2004 days, and kind of the reverse from how, didn't start in the real world flying, kind of did FS 2004, and just totally from my first flight, just fell in love with it, and then kind of progressed up to FSX, and then when I was like 17, I was like, I think I've done thousands of hours, and I was like, I really want to add to the immersion, like, what can I do? And I Googled and was like, check out like real, air traffic control and VATSIM and Pilot Edge. And then once that happened, I was hooked. It was over. Like, it was a done deal. And then I kind of progressed to starting college and thinking, what have I loved since I was 7 years old, which was flying anything. So it was, okay, let's go into flight training. And then I kind of progressed into real world flying, and then got all my ratings, and kind of have always stayed very much active in the flight simulation space, even flying real world airplanes. And then over COVID, I was thinking, what would be really cool? I'd love flying and having air traffic control from that side, but what about trying to be a controller? And I was my COVID mission. Joe was my instructor for a part of my training, is to try and get my C1 at ZNY, and fell in love with that side as well. And really, I think having both sides of that has been so cool for real world flying and for simulation, and still actively fly in the sim. I mean, I got back from a 5-hour flight a couple days ago, and I wanted to go fly an A320 from Vegas to San Diego. So it's still very much a part of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I mean, it's very clear that we all have some connection to, real world aviation and simulator, and experiences that you get on both can sometimes go, I flew this on real world and I want to go see it in the sim. Could I have done it a different way? Or sometimes there are very influential things on the simulator that you're like, I'm going to go try this in the real world. Do you guys have any, influences from your flight sim days that maybe influenced your path into real world aviation?
Well, from my perspective, as soon as I got involved in the controlling side and learning all the nuances and how immersive and tough it was to earn your ratings through VATSIM, it was no joke. Plus adding New York, where you have to learn 4 Bravo airports and then work your way up to New York Center, it was like none other, and I enjoyed the challenge of it. Then I was a controller for 2 years on VATSIM before I even logged on as a pilot, because I didn't know the pilot phraseology. I was used to hearing it, not doing it. Then when I started flying, I'm like, I wonder what it's like real world. So if it weren't for VATSIM, today I absolutely would not be a pilot. There's no chance that I would ever be a pilot if it weren't for VATSIM.
Yeah, I'm much the same way in terms of flight simulation. That's what got me into aviation, and I think I speak for everyone who is a pilot that it is, it's a job for a lot of us, or has been a job for a lot of us, but it's also very much a passion, and VATSIM feeds into that passion for a lot of us. I've made, now that I'm retired, it's sort of VATSIM that keeps me in aviation, and I really don't miss my career as much because I have the opportunity to log on, fly online, and then the community of people that I've met and continually meet coming back to these types of events has been great. It's really, it just all sort of feeds in this circle back into just a love of aviation.
Yeah, no, I mean, my dad has always loved being on airplanes. I'm the only pilot in my family, but my dad's passion for aviation definitely got me into it. And then with simulation, I think the immersion that VATSIM adds and Pilot Edge and all these different companies and softwares, it just makes you feel like you're actually in the real airplane. And now seeing students that I teach as a CFI, passing them on to, hey, try VATSIM. Like, just see what it's like, and hey, maybe it will help, maybe it won't, but I'm telling you, it's gonna help. And then the next lesson, they come back, I'm like, dude, that is amazing. Like, what did you do? And went on VATSIM, he or she went on VATSIM, and it's just using as a training tool as well. It's been just incredible to see from a teaching point of view as well.
Yeah, that brings up a really good point, because we've been at the booth all day, and we're finding that a lot of the FS Expo attendees today have questions along the lines of, we've heard of, VATSIM is a little tough. Maybe VATSIM controllers have a bad rap because they'll pounce on you if you're not super perfect or anything like that. And I'm curious to hear from you guys. You bring up a really good point about being a training tool. What do you highlight from VATSIM that is beneficial for people in this room who may be interested in expanding into the real world of aviation, but they're really good at sim and they're trying to elevate that experience? What on VATSIM specifically brings to our attendees here today that would make it a good training tool?
I think even learning just the very basics, even just the phonetic alphabet, how to say numbers correctly, how to say a runway number correctly, how to respond to an ATC instruction, that all can help, and whatever you do on VATSIM directly translates to the real world. Even flying an ILS and approach, for example, before you even do it in the real world, get on VATSIM, practice it, learn how the procedure works, learn what ATC is going to say, and everything after that, whether you're going into an uncontrolled field, are you going to have to cancel your IFR? How does that all work? So I think just learning even the very basics, and you'd be surprised, especially on the ATC side, just by knowing the basic phonetic alphabet or how to pronounce numbers correctly is extremely difficult. And it took a lot of time for certain people in my class when I was going through training to just figure that little bit of information out. Not even talking about ATC procedures at this point, but just the very basics. And I think VATSIM does a great job with it, whether it's the new member orientation or the pilot club, for example, any of these virtual airlines that guide you through all this. So just even the basics, I think VATSIM does a great job at it.
I definitely agree with all that. Again, my story was that I started as a controller, but when I became an instructor, actually before I became an instructor and was a student pilot, I'd be going up, learning steep turns, stalls, all of those fun things, and my instructor's like, well, this is what you say to air traffic control. I'm like, yeah, I got it. And that's just because of VATSIM, and truly, VATSIM is such a tool, even as an instructor, much like Max was saying. If my students are struggling with communications, and let's say they can fly the airplane fantastic, but they get nervous trying to cold call ATC, I'll say, you know what, I'm certified in New York. That also covers the airports I'm training you at. So you know what, I'll log on here, load up your flight sim, go to Allentown, go somewhere, and we're gonna practice it. And they will, and then I'll say, okay, perfect. They'll come do their lesson, and we'll do it real world, and they'll be like, whoa, that was almost exactly the same. And that's the beauty of VATSIM, is that the immersion and the accuracy of what you're going to experience on VATSIM is second to none.
Yeah, I would just say even just taking it even more simpler than that, just having a student go on VATSIM and just hit the push to talk button. The amount of students I see that are so scared just to actually just talk to someone on the frequency, just having go on VATSIM, if it could be your plus keyboard sign, it doesn't be a push to talk on your HOTAS Warhawk, it doesn't matter, just to be able to get that response from a controller has been really helpful, I think, for students. And you get an airplane like, oh, I did that on VATSIM last night, I'm good. And I think that's been helpful too.
And if you pull it back to sort of a 30,000 foot level and look at sort of the community, right? I'll generalize things and say that there's half of the community that sees flight sim as a game. There's half of it that sees it as a simulation. And VATSIM is the tool for people who see it as a simulation, who want to immerse themselves in real world procedures. And the fidelity of simulators is such these days that, as all these three guys said, you jump in the sim and then you jump in the real world and you feel like you're doing the same thing. It's absolutely true.
And yeah. I can tell you the procedures that you have to learn as part of being a VATSIM controller. We have real world SOPs that we're learning. So when I'm in the airlines and I'm going into LaGuardia or Kennedy or Philadelphia, because that's my base, I can tell you I know exactly what to expect because I know the airspace delegation. I know the headings they have to issue. And there are many times where my captain, who's never heard of VATSIM, he's like, ask them if they can do this. I'm like, I'll ask, but they're gonna say no. And they say no.
Yeah, I have to add a personal anecdote to that. I flew my plane up here from Indianapolis to Providence, and the resources on VATSIM were so accurate that I was able to basically go in and prepare myself. I mean, no one is above, extra preparation training. Everyone can always be learning. All these guys up here are going to tell you that exact same thing. A good pilot's always learning. And I was taking notes, looking on VATSIM for support for my real-world challenging flight up here. And I think that says a lot about who is running VATSIM, because it's not just the staff, it's really the members that make up VATSIM. So what have your experiences been like in the community? We've highlighted that there is a community, and there are so many different types of people who use VATSIM. What has your experiences been on your time on VATSIM interacting with your community members?
Yeah, that's definitely a huge aspect. I think it's, one of the bigger parts of VATSIM. even looking today, we have a whole crowd up front just supporting us from Atlanta, from Denver, from wherever, from anywhere in the world, even, from Ireland, from South Africa, wherever. I think the community aspect in terms of you just seeing who are you actually talking to on the other side of the mic and putting a face to the name essentially, and then going out grabbing a beer later after this expo. I think that's a huge part of the network, and I think these guys can agree that you're not just here to see all the new products. I think you are here to put that face to the name, to see who's doing what, who's the founder or the president of VATSIM, and who's running your facilities and things like that. So big part of the I think big part of VATSIM is the community.
VATSIM was a social network before Facebook was around, right?
Agreed.
If you look at the dates, and the sub-communities within our network, BVA, the pilot club, the virtual airlines, everybody that sort of either is directly involved or tangentially involved in the network creates these communities of friendships that, I can count so many friends that I've taken from the VATSIM community that are both local to me physically but around the world. And it's just great for that.
Yeah, no, I'd just say some of my fondest memories of flight simming and being a part of the VATSIM community is sitting on TeamSpeak, on the ZNY TeamSpeak, and just hanging out with everyone after a crazy F&O. You're just like, what just happened? But in the best possible way. And it's like those memories you don't forget, the relationships that you build with, even, you don't know anyone in ZDC or in ZBV or whatever, and they come in, you're like, hey dude, that was a wild event, like let's talk about it. It's like you don't have to know them, but you kind of share this common bond of like going through something together like an F&O, and you're just like, yeah, like I can't wait to meet you at Expo, right? And like then you come here and you meet them and you're like, you go out for a beer, right? Yeah. If they're over 21. Or if you do whatever, and it's just the community aspect I think adds so much value to the whole experience. Yes, is it so cool controlling and seeing all the crazy, video maps and all this stuff, and you're working all these airplanes, but it's everything else that I think really makes it just an amazing community to be a part of, and it's amazing.
For me, I was walking around, because I stream on YouTube and Twitch, as many of you have probably seen my face once or twice, as I'm about to rage quit controlling New York Center, everything top down.
You've done that?
I just had maybe once or twice. So I had someone come up to me who I've never met, who watches my streams, and said, hey, I just want to thank you. I'm like, for what? And they're like, I can't watch your lives, but I'll play them back when I'm driving in the car just to listen to your ATC so that I can practice my phraseology for when I go into my private pilot training, and even my instructor can notice a difference because I'm watching your stream. So I just want to thank you for that, which is just a fantastic thing to be told, because I enjoy entertaining and I enjoy controlling, but at heart, I'm an instructor. And the ability to know that I'm sitting at home and, it may be a fun stream, entertaining and whatnot, but I'm actually imparting knowledge and getting people involved in real world aviation and, bridging that gap between simulation and real world, that's the biggest reward in the world.
I don't think any of that is surprising. The aviation industry is an industry of passion, I feel like. Everybody loves, no matter what they're doing. Even, displayed on screen in all of our different backgrounds, we all do something just slightly different, yet we all find common ways to enjoy VATSIM. I think that's an important part of the selling point of VATSIM, but, we still get questions at the booth today about, I'm interested. You've got me hooked. I know what VATSIM is. I know why it's beneficial, but what should my first step be? Where do I begin if I've never stepped foot on the network before?
I'll tell you where not to begin. It's in the middle of a busy FNO, right? You know, when I go back, so I was a member of SATCO. I took a break from flight simulation. I came back onto the network in the mid-2000s, and I remember sitting at my home airport with the center control above me, and I've been a pilot for a decade. I knew what to say. I was still nervous as heck, for no real reason other than it was a new environment. It was exciting. I think a lot of the nervousness that people get is from excitement because they want to do well. And if you're coming into VATSIM with a learning attitude, then you'll not go wrong, right? But just make sure you're putting yourself into a position where you can be successful. Don't look for a busy place. Look for a First Wings event, which we started just over a year ago, right? Look for something that caters to people that are new. Look for a tower controller who's by themselves in rural Colorado, who's craving that traffic, and go there and taxi and practice with them. Don't jump into Boston last night, because that's your quickest way to feel failure.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, the number one thing I tell people who log on to VATSIM for the first time is know how to fly your airplane, because I don't want you to be flying out of Kennedy, which is difficult enough, and say, oh, my autopilot isn't working. I don't know how to program this or that. It's like me being an Airbus pilot real world and hopping into a 7.3 sim and going on VATSIM. I wouldn't do it because I don't know the 7.3 and I don't know how to fly it. As long as you know your airplane, don't force yourself to have to go into a big airliner. Hop into a 172. A 172 can shoot an RNAV approach. It can shoot an ILS. But before you do that, go to maybe an uncontrolled airport that doesn't have ATC and just fly around the pattern. Make traffic calls on CTAF. Then when you're ready, okay, go to a Class Delta, a small field, much like Tim just said, and start talking to a controller. You're going to start learning phraseology while not having the pressure of one controller controlling 30 different airplanes at once, and you stressing out because you don't know if you're going to miss a call. You're going to get them annoyed. You know, take it step by step. When I started on VATSIM as a pilot, I started at an uncontrolled field in the 172. Then I started at a Delta, Charlie, and moved my way up. Even though I knew the phraseology, I wanted to make sure that I was comfortable with what I was doing. And don't be afraid to ask the controller for help. Put in your remarks, if you file an IFR flight plan, say new pilot. If I see that as a controller, I'm going to speak slower to you and make sure that I can help you as much as I can.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bring up a really good point about, you know, the IFR portion of it and jumping right in, you know, big airliners, big airspace. But I think something that I can speak for controllers is I feel like we don't have enough VFR traffic on the network. Yeah. And I would love to see for flight simmers to come on and start flying VFR and enjoying, you know, we have all these custom software, hardware that we have on display here today. You know, put it to use. Go out there and find something, find a new adventure. You know, the sim is a great place to try new things, to talk to new people. What are your guys' experience with, you know, flying IFR and VFR on the network? Are there any, you know, awesome flights that you recall that were just the best sim flight ever?
Yeah, I mean, I think also just to go back on your last point, you know, I think if you see a, you know, an approach TradeCon up and there's not that much traffic, like, we love VFR traffic. Like, we don't get a lot of that. So, like, for us, it's great practice, right? It's different phraseology. There's so many different things you have to do with a VFR, kind of target, identify it, all that good stuff. And it's like, I think that also helps the controller out as well, because when we have a big event and we have airplanes, hey, yeah, we just worked that VFR, 3 VFRs coming in, and we feel much more comfortable about it. Now, maybe not on FNO, but on other times, like, I think controllers, at least I do, like, I like working VFR traffic. So, regarding experiences, you know, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. You know, there's multiple times where I'm going in the real world to a new airport, Alpine, Wyoming, Innsbruck, Austria, that I've gone in and done a flight in the sim with ATC, without ATC, whatever it might be, because it's so realistic. I feel so much more comfortable going in, and each time I've done that into a new challenging airport, in Austria, and I'm like, wow, I just saw this 2 nights ago in the sim at home in New York, and I feel so much more comfortable about it. And I think from a safety point of view as well for real world flying, it's incredibly helpful, especially with air traffic control. So I think from a real world point of view, there's so much benefit to both. and how you can complement the two of them together really effectively.
I love flying with a purpose. A huge proponent of virtual airlines, and if I'm doing VFR stuff or smaller stuff, FS Economy. Love that app.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you go over to the VATSIM booth, there are virtual airlines there. There's the Virtual USA Flying Club, and they do a lot of VFR stuff. I've done events with them where they're going to be going from Poughkeepsie to some field in Long Island, and we do the Skyline route in the Bravo, talk to ATC. You don't want to talk to ATC, go below the Bravo. Doing VFR stuff as a controller is a lot of fun because it makes us think in a different way. We have to separate you with wake turbulence when it comes to a 172 behind an Airbus or a heavy 777. You are just as important as any other aircraft on that network, and I would argue more important because we have to think to make sure that we're following procedures for you, but it also gives you a different level of understanding of procedures in airspace delegation. IFR world, there's very little to worry about airspace-wise except for, airspeed you can maintain below a Bravo. That's like the main thing you really have to understand. VFR, you have to know, okay, I'm going to be going into a cross Charlie, I need to be talking to ATC and have a transponder code. I'm going into a Bravo, I need to hear cleared into Bravo airspace. So it teaches you as well. So start on the VFR side and then migrate to the IFR side.
I don't have a specific route. Going back to your question, I think I'm just a private pilot myself, so I can't really go into weather. So when I go into the sim, I like to go into like the worst weather possible and just fly into the really bad weather because I can't do it real world. And I'm sure they can't really do it either. But just going through those heavy thunderstorms or rain or ice or something, might not be realistic. But that's what I like to do. But no specific route.
Hey, no, I think that's the fun part about VATSIM is that it's still one community. Everyone gets to be together, but yet you all have unique experiences and things that you like to do. And it does reflect what you can do with aviation in the real world. I think that's the awesome part about VATSIM. I want to zone in a little bit on, we have some titles up on the screen, and Paul, this question is for you. So can you talk a little bit about what you do, what it means to be the Atlantic Arctic ATM? Talk to people, what does the air traffic system represent in VATSIM? How do we simulate that? What do you do?
So yeah, ultimately I'll start from the top. Basically, it boils from the regions down to the divisions, down to the subdivisions. And then in the subdivisions, like he said, air traffic manager, deputy air traffic manager, there's events coordinators, training administrators, and then also below that there's what we call mentors, so your primary trainers, your instructors who are watching you during your over-the-shoulder examinations. But overall, as the air traffic manager, you're kind of in charge of the entire facility. You're making sure that all the teams are working, they have what they need, making sure your website, your email systems work and everything like that. But also, I keep saying team. It's not just me, it's not just Brandon. There's always somebody that is there with you. So I have my deputy air traffic manager, Larry, front and center right here. He's a huge help. He helps with roster management, removing aircraft, controllers, managing their certifications and things like that, answering emails. So there is always a team that's behind, me, Brandon. So it goes back to the community, in my opinion. There's always somebody that you can rely upon. If you have a question, there is somebody that you can reach out to, whether it's on Discord, whether it's on TeamSpeak, or even in person. And there should be always somebody that is able to guide you in the right direction and answer your questions.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of cool volunteer opportunities there that people might not know of. Talk to us about the air traffic controller training side. We have a couple of instructors, and I myself am one up here, and we've done that for a long time, where we may or may not be real-world air traffic controllers, but we've taken the time to dedicate to studying, what the real FAA procedures are, so that we can train anyone who's interested in becoming a virtual air traffic controller to do so up to the highest standards. So I'd love to hear from both Paul and Joe about your experiences as an instructor on VATSIM.
Yeah, so like you said, we train, and I'm just speaking for Atlanta, but I know a lot of other facilities and regions do it the same way. We try and do it as realistic as possible. There's obviously limitations to what we can teach and what people can do on the network itself, but I think in terms of what we teach, we still rely on what the FAA gives us, the 7110.65, which is like the ATC Bible in a sense. We try and get the real world SOPs We adjust them to tailor, VATSIM needs and everything like that, but it's still the same procedures, it's the same phraseology. And what you saw earlier today, if you visited our booth, in terms of all the ATC clients, from a real air traffic control perspective, it is, I would say, almost 99% realistic. There's some limitations, but it looks and sounds the exact same way for the most part. So I think we do a really good job in training controllers. And in my opinion, a lot of people say, oh, VATSIM doesn't really translate to the real world, at least the ATC perspective. I tend to disagree. Even like I mentioned earlier, just knowing the phonetic alphabet, knowing how to pronounce things correctly, basic phraseology, radar service terminated, squawk VFR, frequency change approved. That's the same phraseology that they use in the real world, and you can learn it for free on VATSIM. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, if you ever go through the controller side of things, essentially you're given your base knowledge by VATSIM, and you learn your ratings of S1, S2, S3, C1, all the way up, and then facility-wide, you're going to learn that specific facility's procedures. Now, Philadelphia's procedures versus LaGuardia's procedures are two very different things. The beauty about New York and being an instructor in New York is every single airport has a different technicality to it, where a student may have their vectoring skills down, but now they have to get their speed management skills down. Now they have to deal with double downwinds, parallel downwinds using one runway. So everything is building upon each other. And at least in New York as an instructor, we try to hold our students to the most accurate as possible. People are going to make mistakes, and we understand that. But giving that level of immersion, especially to a pilot who flies at real world like myself or many, hundreds of others on the network, they'll fly in and be like, wow, this feels like I'm at work right now. And that's what we try to achieve. And that also gives the student the ability to, get a feedback and say, their air traffic control was fantastic, and, keep engaging with it and keep working their way up.
To go on the other side of that, Max, you said it was your COVID goal to become a controller. Talk to us about what that experience was like for you, going from real world pilot to doing this virtually, and you even said Joe is your instructor, so you'll have to only say good things here, but what was that experience like for you, going from pilot to controller?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly different. I'm not sure I knew what I was really getting myself into. I think you look at it like, oh yeah, I'll control airplanes. I think I know how to vector, and it shouldn't be that hard, right? And I think for me at ZNY, I'd always heard for years and years, right, to get your C1 at ZNY was like the hardest thing to do, right? It was the washout rate was crazy and all this stuff. I'm like, listen, I want to challenge myself, and why not? If I don't get it, I don't get it, but give myself a really tough goal. So I kind of started at Philadelphia, went through the process, and I mean, there was times where I was like, I don't think I can do this. This is really hard. But I think setting a goal, and I'm always a big believer, if you put your mind to something, you make it happen. And it took about 1.5 years through different instructors, and it's, as a student, you're so grateful for the instructor's time because they don't get paid to do it, right? They're volunteering their time. The amount of times at 11 o'clock at night I was doing a session with Umar or Joe or whoever, DA, whoever it might be, and it's like, one, you just so appreciate that, but two, you get to the point where you start getting to these really heavy sweat boxes, and it's not a joke, you're sweating. It's a lot. And I think getting to the point where I got the C1, and then I was a mentor at ZNY, and then seeing from the other perspective of wow, that was me, I sucked. That was really bad, and getting better, and then kind of seeing the roles reverse and being able to pass some of that knowledge down has been a really cool process. But it was certainly something I didn't think was going to be as hard as it was, and I'm really happy that I did do it. So
that's awesome. That's a great experience. My final pointed question is at Tim. Tim, you sit as the VATSIM president. You get innately a lot of responsibility, but you also get to see the good and the bad of the network. What do you see when you look at VATSIM today? What is it? What did it become? What was it? Where is it now? Where is it going?
As the president, I love coming to these events and meeting our members and meeting people who are not members and introducing them. I think, VATSIM is a tapestry. It's a worldwide tapestry. many people here probably limit their experience to flying in North America, but having flown in China, we have PRC controllers that are here live controlling. Australia, New Zealand. I love flying in Europe. None of that would be possible if not for the volunteers who are not only controllers and mentors and instructors, but the people behind the scenes. I would encourage everyone here, if you're back at our booth and you see the guys wearing the green polos with the VATSIM technology shirts on, thank them, because they're the ones that are keeping this alive for us, and we have such an amazing uptime now. The stuff that our technology people have done really since before COVID, because the spike in traffic that we got through COVID from everybody staying at home wanting to become controllers or wanting to become virtual pilots because there was nothing else to do, the traffic required so much work on the back end to keep things going. And now our technology is streamlined to the point that we have so much stuff and so much appreciation for our technology people for keeping that stuff up. That's something that the rank and file member doesn't see, but that as a member of the Board of Governors I see all the time. And not only that, but they have streamlined it to the point of efficiency too, where our cost to run the network, which is published, it's less than $2,000 a month to run our network, which is amazing considering what it does. And for our donors out there, as we are a 501(c) charity in the United States, to the people who are donating to us as well to keep the lights on, we really appreciate you as well. So for me, on the back end of stuff and the administrative side, those are the people that we all owe a huge debt of thanks to.
Absolutely, yeah. We have just a couple minutes left, and I want to leave some time for the audience to give us some Q&A. So maybe just about 20 seconds from each of you. What would be your words of advice for somebody who showed up here today and has looked at VATSIM before and they haven't took the plunge? What's your advice to them?
I think just sit down and listen. Take a second with the controller that you see over there. Just see what they are doing. Just listen to them for a little while and try and get the picture in terms of what they're doing on their end as well. But also after that, just connect as an observer wherever. You're essentially invisible, so you're not going to be a hindrance or anything to anybody. Just listen to ATC. Kind of listen to what are the procedures, what are they saying to every single aircraft for the most part. And I think that is probably one of the best new developments, I'd say, with the new observer function, where you can go anywhere and just listen and progress your way up. Like Joe said, connect to the Class Delta airport with where there's this one tower controller, and then work your way up to the busy Friday night event.
Yeah, I agree. My advice is just do it. Do not hesitate, because I will promise you, speaking from experience, VATSIM will change your life. You will look at aviation in a whole different way, and it may lead you down a pathway, much like my own, where you discover real-world aviation because of VATSIM. A free resource that you found online or found because of this panel could change your life forever and give you a deeper love and appreciation, like all of us here on this stage, for aviation.
I want to reiterate something Joe said earlier, which is know how to fly your airplane. Know how to maintain an altitude, maintain a speed, maintain a heading. Those are your basic minimums, right? Understand your systems. Don't extend yourself beyond what you can do, because all you're going to do is cause frustration for yourself, for other pilots, for the controllers, and lower the overall enjoyment that everybody is having on the network. Turn it into a challenge for yourself. Become better, and then become better within the network.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what everyone else has said. I would add just, try it. But also, if, you're getting comfortable with the network, the observer function's great, but also live ATC, right? That's like another really good key, if you're still you're observing and I just don't get it. Honestly, in your car, Bluetooth it in, listen to Kennedy Departure, right? Listen to whatever, LAX Final, and just start getting that sort of the phraseology and oh yeah, that was I think I've heard that on observer mode, and now it kind of makes sense, and kind of putting the two together. So I would say definitely the live ATC thing is something that I used in flight training, and something that I think is really useful too from a VATSIM point of view as well.
Listen to live ATC, watch it on Flight Radar 24 at the same time.
Yep, I agree.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking the panel here for spending their time talking about what their experiences have been. We have about 5 minutes. We have microphones on either aisle here for anybody who has some brief Q&A.
Hi to the panel. We've got an online question as well from Chad. He's asked, he wants to have the immersion but doesn't want to get destroyed by the controllers. He's seen it a lot of times, so he's asking about something to do with a beginner portal or somewhere with more support whilst enjoying the precision of flying online with ATC.
Sure. So we have a bunch of ATOs, training organizations for pilots. A lot of them are free. There's a lot of virtual airlines that include training portals as well. So those are two great things. And again, our First Wings events are a great place to dip your toe in and to start. Those are scheduled, I think, every quarter, and they rotate around the world. So look for those. Those are great places.
Awesome. Let's start with a question over here on this side.
Hi, my question's for Tim. What's one feature you would add to VATSIM if there are no technical or budget limitations?
It's a pretty good simulation right now. I'll let you know about two things that we're working on, though. As you know, just before COVID, we severely increased our audio system with the help of Gary Oliver and his whole technical crew. We've now taken that on, and Mike Evans, who's one of our technical leads, is now going to be doing a topographical overlay to that, so that we'll now be simulating in our audio system what effects that topography will have on that. We also have a working group, for those of you who use CPDLC and are reliant on Hoppy, we have a working group right now that involves both our network as well as a lot of the aircraft developers who are looking to implement a native CPDL system into VATSIM.
Thank you so much.
Question over here.
Years ago, I was on VATSIM at a Class Delta, and I asked, I called up the ground controller for pattern work, and he gave me a clearance and a squawk code. So I just bring that up because I know that most people do IFR on VATSIM. I was trying to do VFR, and it was just amusing to me that he wasn't familiar with VFR stuff. So once I got in the air, the tower controller realized what happened, and he had me reset my transponder to VFR. So I was curious, like, how does the training work for people that are very beginner in VATSIM and moving up from there?
So the way it works is typically as an S1, a clearance delivery ground controller, you learn the difference between a VFR versus an IFR flight plan and the clearances you can issue. What I would say in response to that experience, and this is for anyone, if you know that the procedure in a Class Delta, you don't need a squawk, you just get a taxi and that's it. And for some reason the controller is confused or something, feel free to file a feedback on that to the ARTCC, because in that case, their instructors and their senior staff will see that in regards to the controller and make sure to remediate that problem, because we never want that immersion to be broken.
And when you're using that, leaving that feedback, keep it positive. Don't destroy the controller for something that's just a little mistake.
No, I think in part it was what you guys were saying, that everyone does IFR, very few people do VFR. So he just probably never had anyone do VFR with them. But otherwise, it's great service.
Thank you. We got time for one more question over here.
Hi, I actually had two quick ones. For Paul, as I understand it, you're the only actual ATC and virtual ATC on the panel?
Actual controller and virtual controller,
Yeah.
correct. Yes, sir.
What's the difference in the levels of stress between the two?
The good thing is, on VATSIM, if the dots touch, nobody dies. I mean, that's really
Understood.
the biggest thing. Like I mentioned, there's some limitations to what we do on VATSIM in terms of, whether airspace goes active, different airspace configurations, weather. Weather's a huge one. I mean, pilots on VATSIM, including myself, will go through a thunderstorm. But pilots, real world, they'll need to deviate. Now, if you deviate, are you going into somebody else's airspace? Do I need to coordinate with a different sector or a different controller? So there's a lot of really similar things on VATSIM, but there's also some limitations. But the biggest thing is, I could just turn off my computer at home and the airplanes disappear, essentially. I can't really do that at work. But I love being able to say I love what I do, so I'll do it on VATSIM, I'll do it at work as long as I can.
question was, getting off the elevator this morning, I saw one of the red shirt volunteers. He said that he had to train for 2 years on VATSIM. Does that sound about accurate before actually going online?
I think these mics might cut out right now, but we'll be here after, I'm sure. So if there is any follow-up questions, please feel free to ask. But yeah, 2 years, depending where you go, especially like a busy facility like New York, where it's just insanely complex airspace. 2 years, maybe a year and a half sounds about right.
It took me 2 years, 3 months to work through Kennedy LaGuardia, Newark, Philadelphia, Liberty departure, and eventually New York Center.
And not only that, like it can take you 6 months to get your private license, it can take you 2 years. It depends how much time you put into it, how quickly you grasp the concepts, right? It's the same thing when you're ATC training. If you're on every day practicing, it'll take you a lot quicker than once a week.
Yeah, no, I agree. It took me about 2 years to get fully certified, so it's a real thing.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll be at the VATSIM booth if you want to ask us any questions, but we really appreciate you attending this panel, and we hope you have a great rest of your day here at FS Expo. Thank you.